Everybody, welcome to our week number 9 Twitch live stream. I see a bunch of you getting logged in, joining me in the chat. I know this is a slightly different time than normal, so I'm sorry for that. My kids have a minimum day today, and so I was trying to get it in before they are done with school and running around and loud here at the house. So sorry about that. Hopefully it works for some of you, and the rest of you, as always, it will be recorded and you're probably watching this later. So what I want to do today, as I mentioned, we are in week number 9. It's hard to believe it. We're past the halfway point of the semester, past the halfway point of the class. The first half of the class is behind us. So I want to give you just a little bit of feedback about last week, and then we'll jump into this week. Good morning to you as well. So last week for week number 8, you obviously had your reading, you had the discussion, you had the exam, and overall, I mean, a lot of really wonderful pieces of feedback for all of you. If you look at the exam from last week, and I wrote this down in my notes here, the average amount of time that people took taking the test was 44 minutes, so plenty of time. The average score was a 90%, which is phenomenal. That means the average score was a low A. The high was 100 and the low was 66. So I saw a really good showing across the board on the exam. A lot of you should be very happy with how you did. And I'd like to always encourage you, and I've said this after the first exam, but I'd like to continue to encourage you to use the exam as a learning opportunity. If you are happy with how you did, keep doing the same thing in this third unit that we start this week. If you wish you had done a little bit better, now is a great time to kind of readjust and reevaluate. And I do have a little self-assessment this week to kind of help you think about that a little bit more. But if you find that you aren't doing as well as you would like, you could always study a little more, study a little bit differently. Remember that you always have access to the study guide, so you could even do a little bit at a time if that makes it a little less intimidating. But as I mentioned, most of you should be very happy. A lot of A's and B's on the exam, which makes me really happy to see. For discussion 8 last week, again, a lot of you should feel really good. I think you did a really wonderful job thinking about the scenario that I gave you with the bookstore and how you could have a random sample and then how you could pick a specific type of sample and some problems with that. A few of you, I wrote I wanted a little bit more. Again, if you find that you keep getting that piece of feedback of give me a little bit more, or you're losing a couple of points, just try and elaborate more in your responses. And there's nothing wrong with reading, those 5 or 10 peer responses before you do your own. And that's kind of a great way to see what are other people saying, what are other people doing. It's not cheating at all. It's a totally being resourceful. So you can even go out and kind of gather a little information in the spirit of our class. Do a little research, see what other people are posting before you do your own. So again, for the most part, last week, really, really nicely done. A lot of you, pats on the back, doing a fantastic job. We move into week number 9 this week, chapter 10, discussion 9, a self-assessment, and then the extra credit is our agenda for this week. So let's take a look at chapter 10. And as always, you have 3 things to do. Read the chapter in the book, read through the lecture, and watch the lecture video. 1, 2, 3. So if you click on the lecture, chapter 10 is about an introduction to simple experiments. And we've talked about the difference between experiments and correlation. We've talked about independent and dependent variables. Now we're going to look a little bit at experiments in more detail. What are the variables? How can we look at causal claims? Different types of designs like independent group and within groups designs, looking at causality and the validities. So we're building on all the information that we've already started, but now kind of putting that together to look at experiments. On the Beyond the Book page, I have a little bit about how to conduct an experiment. What are the different steps that you need to follow, developing a hypothesis. So just some stuff kind of building on what the textbook had to say. And then on the final page, here are the terms that I'd like you to know from chapter 10. And as I mentioned a moment ago, if you aren't doing as well as you would like on the exams, what you could do is start and define all of these for chapter 10 and focus on those this week. And then next week, add the ones from the next chapter. But again, a lot of you are doing a beautiful job and have been consistently doing great, which makes me so happy to see. Don't forget to also watch the lecture video with the PowerPoint slides. That's going to be me lecturing on the topic, which should be really helpful. And then you have discussion 9. So as always, you have a discussion this week. Here are my instructions and then my little video, like always, kind of keeping with that consistency. So the topic for this week is introducing simple experiments. And this discussion will give you a chance to play around with your own experimental design. I want you to come up with a topic that interests you, and it doesn't have to be related to psychology. It can be, of course, but come up with a topic that interests you, and you're going to design an experiment. After you've generated a clear experimental idea and design, you're going to describe it by answering these 7 questions. So number 1, what are you researching? What's your hypothesis? What do you want to know? Tell me a little bit about what you want to find out. Number 2, what is the independent variable and its levels, and the dependent variable and its levels? So kind of operationalizing and defining that. Number 3, building on what we talked about last week. How are you going to select your participants? What are your methods? What are your procedures? Number 4, is your experiment an independent groups or within groups design, and explain. Number 5, is your experiment a pre-test, post-test only, repeated measures, or concurrent measure design, and explain. Number 6, what are your control variables? Do you have any confounding variables? And then number 7, what will you do to ensure internal validity? Think about covariance, temporal precedence, counterbalancing, and so on. So pick something that interests you. Pick something fun. And again, it does not have to be related to psychology. So let's say that you really want to know about, like, how does eating candy affect your ability to sleep at night, right? It's getting closer to Halloween, definitely eating a lot of candy. You could totally set that up as an experiment, and then you would just describe and define everything here based on those questions. Don't forget to really elaborate and show off your knowledge and understanding. And also don't forget to reply to a classmate to get those 2 kind of easy points for that peer response. The other thing that you have this week, and you've done one of these before, but since we've passed the halfway point, you do have another self-assessment that I'd like you to take. This is worth 5 points, but you do have as much time as you need. Please be honest. The whole point of this is to kind of get you to reflect on your thinking and learning and your process in this class. It's just 5 short questions, kind of thinking about where you are now. Is there anything you want to change moving forward? What are you doing well? What can you work on? And it's hopefully going to give you an opportunity to kind of assess where you are at as we reach that halfway point. Of course, I will post the recording of this a little bit later once I've had it uploaded and downloaded. And then I do have some reminders for you, as always, before I give you that Twitch extra credit question. Kind of a short and sweet week for us here. No homework assignment or exam or anything. So number 1 reminder, please double check that subscription status. Like for example, Avneet, you don't have the little football cake next to your name anymore. So if you notice that little football cake is gone, just make sure you renew it. And if you have never subscribed, you can still figure that out, especially if you're watching this later as a recording. The other thing to remind you, if you're looking at the schedule, let's take a look at next week. So next week, our live stream will be at 1 o'clock. So let me put that here in the chat. Our live stream for next week will be on Wednesday, October 16th at 1 o'clock p.m. So kind of back to our normal time. Sorry again that it was a little bit earlier this week, but my children will be home shortly and then it will be loud. So I figured it would be better to do this when it was still quiet. Again, if you weren't able to make it live and are watching this later, that's totally fine. Just make sure that you are subscribed so you can still answer the question for extra credit. And then finally, let me give you the extra credit question, something that kind of builds on what we're talking about this week. So I'll put it here in the chat. This is the week number 9 Twitch extra credit. What is the difference between an independent groups design and a within groups design, and describe? Okay, so what is the difference between an independent groups design and a within groups design, and describe? And when you're ready to answer that, since we are in week number 9, you will click on optional Twitch extra credit number 9 right here. And then up at the top, click on start assignment, which gives you your little text box to type your response. Hopefully you spell response better than I did. And then you can hit submit for your confetti burst and presents, little presents, right? How exciting. So those are the big things to work on for this week. Again, make sure you reflect a little bit on that self-assessment, part number 2. Don't forget to do discussion 9, do your reading, do the lecture video, all that kind of stuff as always. And then you do have that 2-point optional extra credit. And I appreciate so many of you have been doing this. Those points are definitely going to add up. If you haven't been doing it so far, even if you started now, it's still like a good like 16, 18 points of extra credit. So that will really make a big difference if you missed a few points on the exam or on a discussion. So I'm glad that so many of you are taking advantage of it. I think that is everything that I wanted to share with you. Again, kind of a short and sweet week since we don't have a homework assignment or an exam. I hope all of you have a wonderful day. Enjoy it. We're moving in the right direction for weather. It feels like it's getting a little bit cooler. It was in the 80s instead of 90s today. And I saw next week it's supposed to be in the 70s. So I'm super excited for that. But I hope you all have a wonderful week. Take care of yourself. Hang in there. And I will hope to see a bunch of you on our live stream next Wednesday at our normal time. So I'll hang out for a couple of minutes. I'm going to minimize my video so I'm not staring at myself, but I will hang out for a few minutes. Thank you as well. Thank you. I'm going to put that in the chat. Thank you. I hope you all have a wonderful week. And again, I will hang out for a few minutes if you do have any questions for me. Otherwise, as always, you're free to go and get going on this week's materials. And I will hope to see you all next Wednesday for our next live stream at 1 o'clock on the 16th. And I am still here if you do have any questions. I minimized my video, but I'm still here for a few more minutes if you think of anything. Otherwise, of course, you can always email me if you think of something later on.